Hey guys, Basebomb here, bringing you another Dragonflight beta video on the DPS DK specs. We had a beta build this week, which brought with it a lot of tuning for both Frost and Unholy. So I thought in this video we'll take a look at all the changes and discuss their impact and how those change, generally which talents we want to go for, that kind of thing. If you were very keen on look at the Wildwood news, you might have seen that there was another article which kind of showed the exact AP percentage changes, right? This is kind of like the Blizzard version of that. You might notice that the spec auras were reset. If you guys are not familiar with a spec aura is, essentially it's a tuning knob that Blizzard uses to buff or nerf specific classes. You know, when you see like an article that a Frost has been buffed by 5%, they do it by changing this aura, which then increases the damage of all other items. So what happened, for instance, for Frost, was that it went from 5%, so everything was buffed by 5%, to 0. However, they then accounted for that change by buffing all the other spells a little bit more, so that the final change, right, is what you will see in this blue post here. So when you say Obliterate damage increased by 15%, it means that it went down by 5% and then was buffed by 20% something-ish. It's not exactly 20%, but it's around there. Just want to clarify that. Anyway, let's just start by having a look at Frost. So we have a lot of abilities which are just flat out buffed. We have Obliterate increased by 15%, Howling Blast by 12%, Breath by 15%, Remorse's Winter by 10%, Frost Strike by 20%. Alright, this is essentially to just buff the spec itself. It also helps to bring in damage into like the core abilities of the spec. So essentially, if you look at the damage profile, we get more damage of our direct damage abilities, and then a little bit less from stuff like Frost Fever and melee auto attacks. I think this is a good change because it makes you feel you have more agency over the damage you do. We see that Frost Scythe damage increased by 50%. Right, pretty much all the direct damage abilities you have in your core rotation were buffed by between 10 and 20%. You can see the Breath and Ghost damage was increased. I don't think this is gonna like skew the talent choice into Breath's favor, because you can see that Obliterate damage was also increased. Like if you bring everything up at the same time, nothing will gain more power than the other just due to that kind of bring it up. Now, we also have a lot of different buffs to talents, which I think is great, because a lot of the talents for Frost felt like unimpactful, not very strong, you know? Unleash Frenzy, strength per stack increased to 2%, was 1%. This is nice. It will feel that it's actually a bit more important to track this buff. Previously, I think it was, you could stack it over 3 times for 3% strength. That's kind of nothing, but 3 times for 6% strength is something you kind of want to keep track of and try and upkeep as much as possible. So good change, happy with that, makes the talent more impactful in the rotation. We have Pillar Frost, strength increased to 25%, was 20%, and strength per rune spent increased to 2%, was 1%. This is a significant buff to Pillar, right? The amount of strength you gain was increased by effectively 25%. So if you gain like 100 strength from pressing it, we would now gain 125, and then it also ramps up twice as quickly. I'm happy with it. I like that Pillar feels like something which is like impactful to press. We're like, nice. Press this ability, all my spells do much more damage. Not too sure how this will skew like Obliteration versus Breath, because they both leverage your Pillar window. I think Obliteration will gain a little bit more because its damage is much more concentrated within the window itself. So if you gain more strength during that window, Obliteration will gain more, whereas Breath kind of extends outside of it and doesn't gain as much from this increase. Alright, we have Frigid Executioner. Obliterate damage increased to 15%, was 10%, and chance to refund 2 runes increased to 50%, was 12%. Happy with this. The talent was a bit undertuned, and it was competing with Rage of the Frozen Champion. And yeah, I think that the choice was just too heavily skewed into Rage's favor, so it's good that they buffed this. This is also good for obliteration, because obliteration likes to get that extra oblit damage. It's such a big portion of its overall. Yeah, happy with this one. Like that they kind of noticed that was a weak talent and buffed it. We also have Piercing Chill. Damage taken per bounce of chill streak increased to 10%, was 5%. This is also a nice change. You know, you have a choice node here where you can either pick up Piercing Chill, or you pick up that talent, which means that chill streak just gets a little bit extra range and has a chance to bounce some extra times. And how it stood previously, this talent was just inferior pretty much every instance, because you only need to get like one extra bounce for that other choice to be better. Buffing this to 10%, I think this is now going to be like an actual kind of choice. Which one are you going to pick? Just happy, because it means that you will have a bit more choice in your talents. Right, we don't want stale talents. We want to kind of pick and choose depending on the situation. This is a change that helps us pick and choose depending on the situation, yeah. We have Shattering Blade. Bonus frost strike damage increased to 100%, was 60%. Huge buff, right? Going from 60 to 100 is a big increase, and is very much needed, because this talent, I think it was a DPS downgrade before. Like, when you have to consume Razor Eyes to trigger this, so before you manage to build up the 5 stacks again, right, everything else is going to deal less damage. So this needs to be impactful for it to be worthwhile. Furthermore, you know, it kind of relies on building up Razor Eyes quickly, which means we have to pick up the Razor Eyes Runeforge, something we don't really need to do, given that we have the new Avalanche and Glacial Advance with talent into that. So this is kind of like a 2-factor negative, where, you know, consuming a Razor Eyes stack means that everything else needs a little bit less damage afterwards, and this kind of forces you into picking up Razor Eyes as a Runeforge, and that is an opportunity cost, because you could have picked something else. So I think it really needs to be powerful to be worthwhile. I'm not sure if this is enough, but it's at least a step in the right direction. Alright, so Endurance Strength increased to 10/20% per rank, was 5/10. This is the talent that gives you strength after pillar. Very happy that it got buffed, because I felt like 5/10% was quite weak. And now when it buffed pillar as well, it was like you would have gotten a big pillar, and then you got this kind of like small strength increase afterwards, which you don't really care about. Buffing this is great. I think it's a very interesting and fun talent, and I'm happy that it's going to be more viable. Right, overall, so many buffs, right? They really look at Frost, went, you know, we need to provide some help here. They increased the base damage of the spec, moved more damage into the core abilities. They buffed lots of talents, which brings you more choice, and kind of also increases the power of the spec as you move through the tree. All these changes are going to be somewhat multiplicative, right? So increase in pillar will increase all other damage, right? Increase in Unleash Friendship will also increase all other damage. They're going to pile up, and I think overall we're going to get something which is far more powerful than before. Saw some initial sims, and I think Frost went up like, was it 40%? I don't know. It's a huge increase. So if you were worried before that Frost looked a bit weak when you placed this in beta, these buffs are going to bring it up in line. And I think it's similar to what Unholy can output at this point. Overall, very happy. Good changes overall. It indicates that I think this indicates that they know what Frost was bad at and what wasn't great about the tree, and they kind of fixed that. So overall, you get a star from me. Now let's talk about Unholy. Unholy a bit different, because instead of just like kind of buffing everything, Unholy is a bit more about shifting around the damage profile. We're going to see a lot more nerfs coming in here. But let's just start off. We have Super Strain, so Frost Fever and Blood Plague are now applied at 80% effectiveness instead of 100% as it was before. This includes like stuff like how much ruling power Frost Fever can generate. This is essentially nerfs the capstone, the Super Strain capstone by 20%, and I think that's fine. Like, Super Strain was already very powerful, and I felt when I was looking at builds, it was always a capstone I would pick up, right? It was just so good. So fair to nerf it, because I don't want us to have like capstones which are pick this every single time, regardless of situation. It should be a choice, like situational choice. It's interesting that they also nerfed how much Frost Fever gain. This is going to give us slightly less resources, but I don't think we get that much from Frost Fever anyway, and we're still going to be having sufficient resources overall. I think it's a hell of a change. It makes sense, and I'm not too sad that it was nerfed. Now, Summon Gargle. Damage with Gargle Strike increased by 25%, and it now properly scales with Mastery. Two excellent changes. So increasing it by 25% is huge, and making scale with Mastery is just a nice bug fix. When we were raid testing, I played Summon Gargle, but you know, I didn't scale with Mastery and didn't have a 25% increase, so it wasn't doing that much damage. I can tell you that with this change, Gargle will absolutely truck in single target. I think we're going to get Dark Arbiter vibes from Legion with this change. You'll see other changes as well kind of also have an impact on this. Gargle is back 100%. I think it's going to be the single target kind of burst build. They made so many changes that makes it feel nice to play. Like our opener now, it's very similar to what we use currently. There's no like extra GCDs coming into play because Gargle is off the GCD. It provides runic power, so we don't have to do that from degenerate pooling business. Oh, love it. It's great. Yeah, I'm very happy about this. Next one, Command of Dead. Damage buff for Army of the Dead ghouls and Gargle increased by 35%. It was 30%. And Command of Dead will now apply to ghouls who are still being summoned in by Army of the Dead when Dark Transformation was pressed. This is very important, right? When you press Army, it takes 4 seconds before all the ghouls spawn. But Dark Transformation buffs them for 30 seconds total. The thing is, right, you had this annoying thing where you wanted to press Army and then you need to wait for everything to summon and then you press Dark Transformation. But this means you lose overlap on the ghouls that were first summoned, right? Because they're going to die before the buff finishes, right? You want to have exact overlap. This change is much better. You can now press Army followed by DT, and like all ghouls will be buffed appropriately. One effect that is also interesting here is that this also has an impact on Apocalypse. So the ghouls that you summon by Apocalypse can also be buffed using Command of the Dead. This change means that you can press Dark Transformation and then Apocalypse, and those ghouls will still be affected by the buff. I'm not sure if this is intended, but it means our opener is nicer. It means that we can use Dark Transformation early, and then we can like do Apocalypse like 2 GCDs after, which is kind of what we want in that situation. Not sure if it's going to change that, but this change is actually a very good quality of life, because it gives you some leeway as well, that you can press DT and then you can summon your ghouls and you get the same kind of effect applied. Much happy. And 35% is more than 30, which feeds into Gargle's power. Death Call, damage reduced by 15%. This is a healthy change. On beta, Death Call was very, very high up there when it came to like, when you looked at our damage profile, Death Call was by far the hardest hitting ability. And it got to the point where you kind of ignored anything else just to prep Death Call all the time. Not that healthy, and it also meant that Epidemic wasn't a good button to press, because Death Call dealing a ton of damage and doing that cleave business meant that it was the button to press every single time essentially. Nothing that is good, because I think it brings more choice into the spec where you can press other things and feel good about those other things. Raise Dead, all pet ghoul damage reduced by 10%. This is kind of shuffling our damage away from passive ghoul damage into more direct sources. Like, I'm not sure if you count Gargle as a direct source, but just your general rotation now deals more damage compared to how much your pet does. I think this is fair. It might have been doing a bit too much, and we don't want too much damage coming from passive sources, which you can't affect that much. I think it's fine. Don't mind too much. We have Death Rot, now applies to all enemies damaged by Epidemic or Death Call. This is actually huge. Previously it was just only primary target, which is a bit odd. When you press Epidemic and you had something targeted, that was the only target that would get it applied, and then everything else would just ignore Death Rot. This will make Epidemic far more viable in Mythic Plus, which I'm very happy about. What you're going to have, it also kind of feeds in very well into how our burst window works, where you can reset up wounds, you dump your runic power with Epidemic, that will then stack up the shadow damage increase debuff on all the targets, which is perfect when we go into our Death and K window and burst everything. I think this is going to feel very satisfying because you're going to be like, okay, we're going to prepare. It's part of the preparation of the pool. We go pop your Dark Transformation, maybe do Unholy Assault and Vile Contagion, right? Spread all the swoons, dump your Rune Power, you know, make sure everything is ready to be killed, so to speak. Great change, and I think this will make Epidemic mandatory in Mythic Class, which I think it should be. Epidemic should be something we play in Mythic Class. Right, we got Scourge Strike, damage reduced by 8%, Clone Shadows, damage reduced by 8%, Fashion Wound, damage reduced by 10%. It just brings down the damage they roll this pack, moves it into stuff like Gargle, right? So I think the overall damage is the same, it's just that more of it comes from Gargle and your Apocalypse Ghouls and your Armor Ghouls, and less of it comes from stuff like Scourge Strike, Clone Shadows, so on. Yeah. Mugs of the Dead, Frostbolt and Shadowbolt increased by 100%. Huge change. Magus will deal a lot of damage, trust me. I wasn't really paying attention to how bad it was before, but it's now going to be a very good single target option to pick up. I'm happy about that. I like the little guy sending off his Frostbolts and Shadowbolt, so yeah, cool. Makes it much more viable to pick up that talent, which is good. You know it is. We have Unholy Pact, no longer grants 5% strength. This is interesting. This means that Unholy Pact is now only that chain between you and your pet. And it means also that Dark Transformation doesn't synergize with anything else, really. Previously, right, you used Dark Transformation to get strength to buff your other ghouls, like from Apocalypse and your army or whatever. So it was like, press all your cooldowns at the same time because they synergize with each other. That synergy has mostly been removed. Dark Transformation, obviously if you pick up that, what's it called again? Ghoulish Frenzy, Ghoulish Monstrosity, the one that gives you and your pet increased damage, that kind of synergizes with like your direct damage dealers, but it doesn't synergize with your pets. So like Apocalypse and Dark Transformation, it's not like Dark Transformation will increase the damage of Apocalypse anymore. I think it's an okay change because it means you have more freedom to kind of press your abilities when you want to and don't feel like you have to always press them at the same time when you might want to delay one for more priority damage or use the other one for way away later, so that kind of thing. We still have some synergy left, like Apocalypse. If you pick up Festamite, using Apocalypse would instantly give you a couple stacks, which gives you strength, which increases your damage from your ghoul. That might be buffed to Dark Transformation. So the synergy isn't 100% gone, but you have to pick up the synergy in the talent tree itself. Yeah, I'm a bit worried that sometimes if there's no synergy between cooldowns, it doesn't feel as rewarding to press them together. But again, it also doesn't feel bad if you have to spread them out, which is something good. So I'm not completely sure what I feel about this, but yeah, we'll see. Right, we have Blood and Touch, increased Scourge Strike damage by 50% for 6 seconds, was 30%. This is good. This talent wasn't that powerful, so buffing it makes it so that we might actually pick it up sometimes. I don't think it is worthwhile still, but maybe. We'll see. Ghoulish Frenzy, attack speed and damage gain decreased to 5/10 seconds, was 6 and 12. A good change, because I felt like Ghoulish Frenzy was a must-have talent to pick, and nothing it means that we kind of get a proper choice between, are we going to pick up Festamite, Ghoulish Frenzy, or Morbidity. Any of those 3 talents are going to be a definite option, and it's going to be a difficult choice now. I think it actually goes into Festamite at the moment, but it's a bit unclear. It's good, right? Situational choice. Depending on the situation, we might pick up one over the other. Finally, Call of Devastation. Now deals 30% of difficult damage over 4 seconds, or 35%. This, again, brings difficult more in line with everything else. All right. I thought I saw a change to Vile Contagion, which isn't part of this. Let me double check here, because if I remember correctly, Vile Contagion was also changed to spread to 7 new targets instead of 8. Yes, there we go. Something which they missed to include here. is that the Val Contagion, so that's a spell that spreads your wounds to everything around it. It used to spread you up to 8 targets, now it spreads to 7. This kind of makes sense because our Scourge Strike can only hit 8 targets in our FNK. So if it previously you had 1 target spread to 8 others, that meant that 9 total targets had wounds on them, and we can only burst it on 8 of those. And it doesn't feel great when you can't kind of burst the wounds you generate. So I think it makes sense that now it kind of now fits exactly with how much we can cleave in our FNK and how many targets will have wounds on them, right? It's not nice to be nerfed, but it kind of makes sense to me, so I'm okay with it. Right, so Unholy isn't all roses, right? We are getting some nerfs, but I feel it's all about shuffling around our damage a little bit, and I think that's okay. The previous damage profile, having Death Goal being such a large part of our overall damage, isn't necessarily healthy, and I think it's better that we now kind of get damage from all the different areas of our rotation. Alright, that was everything I had for you guys today. Do leave a comment down below, let me know what you think about these changes. Are you happy? Are you disappointed? What would you have liked to see if you in an ideal scenario, you know? Do give an upvote, downvote, depending on what you thought about this video. Hit that subscribe button and the little bell if you want to see more of this kind of content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.